on a cold, unsuspecting November evening in 1988, in the quiet, residential city of Misato, within Japan's Saitama Prefecture, a 14-year-old girl named Junko Furuta left her high school just like she had done hundreds of times before. It was November 25th. The air was crisp, carrying the chill of the approaching winter, and the streets were illuminated by the soft glow of vending machines and streetlights. Junko was the picture of a promising future. She was an honor student, known by her teachers and peers as shy, polite, and incredibly soft-spoken. She was widely admired not just for her grades, but for her discipline and her gentle kindness. She had dreams, clear and bright. She wanted to become a fashion designer, to create beauty in the world, and to support her family who loved her deeply. That day, she didn't know that she would never return to the safety of her bedroom. She didn't know that her walk home would be the final moments of her normal life. Her disappearance would trigger one of the most disturbing, heartbreaking, and infamous criminal cases in Japan's modern history. A story of profound failure, of terrifying silence, and of unimaginable cruelty hidden in plain sight within a crowded suburb. 44 days later, her body would be found sealed inside a concrete drum, discarded like trash in an abandoned construction site on reclaimed land in Tokyo. And the truth behind those 44 days, the missed opportunities, the human depravity, and the resilience of a young girl, still shocks investigators and the public today. Before we go any further, please hit like so more people can see this case, and subscribe to the channel with all notifications on, so you never miss a cold case investigation. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your interaction helps ensure these stories are not forgotten. That evening, around 8:30 p.m., Junko was walking home on her usual route. The streets of Misato were calm, a typical scene of suburban Japan in the late 80s. Students were heading home from juku, or cram schools. Bicycles were parked in neat rows outside convenience stores, and neon signs flickered overhead. Nothing about that moment suggested danger. Misato was considered safe. Junko wasn't the kind of teenager to wander off, to skip school, to rebel, or to meet strangers. She was responsible, predictable. She was the daughter every parent hoped for. But as she walked, nearing her home, the trap was sprung. A teenage boy she vaguely recognized from school rode past her on a bicycle, and then, deliberately and violently, kicked her to the ground. It wasn't an accident, it was a calculated assault designed to disorient her. As she lay on the pavement, confused and frightened, trying to gather her belongings, another boy appeared. He was older, taller, someone she didn't know. He approached her with a look of concern, pretending to have witnessed the accident. He offered help. He played the role of the savior. Being the polite girl she was, Junko thanked him, trusting his facade. It was a trap. A brutal, orchestrated performance. What Junko didn't know was that the boy offering help was a high-ranking member of a local juvenile gang with loose connections to the Yakuza. He reported to a 17-year-old named Hiroshi Miyano, though names were withheld for years due to juvenile laws. A student feared for his violence, his excessive pride, and the psychological control he exercised over other teenagers in the area. That night, Miyano had issued a chilling order to his subordinates: bring him a girl. Any girl. Junko, simply by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, became the target. When she accepted the fake offer of help to get home, the dynamic shifted instantly. The facade of kindness dropped. She was forced at knife point away from the main road, coerced into a warehouse nearby, and terrified into silence. From there, she was transported to a house in the Adachi ward of Tokyo, a two-story house that looked just like every other home on the block. It was a teenager's hangout, a place where boys came and went, where loud music played, and where neighbors simply turned a blind eye to the noise. They were unaware, or perhaps unwilling to know, what was unfolding behind those closed doors. When Junko didn't come home by her curfew, the atmosphere in the Furuta household shifted from annoyance to sheer panic within the hour. This was unparalleled behavior for her. Her family immediately began calling her friends. "Is Junko with you? Did she say she was stopping somewhere?" The answer was always no. Panic set in. They contacted the police. In the days that followed, the Furuta family lived a waking nightmare. Flyers were printed and stapled to telephone poles. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, asking if anyone had seen a girl in a school uniform. Her mother barely slept, sitting by the phone, waiting for it to ring. Her brother wandered the streets every night, checking parks and convenience stores, calling her name into the darkness. The community assumed she had been kidnapped by a stranger in a van, or perhaps, against all odds, had run away. But no one imagined the truth. She was being held captive only a few miles away, in a house surrounded by neighbors. Inside that house in Adachi, 4 boys controlled everything. They established a reign of terror. To cover their tracks, they took her school uniform and burned her belongings to make it look like she had voluntarily run away. In a moment of twisted psychological cruelty, they forced Junko to call her parents. Under the threat of violence, with boys watching her every breath, she had to lie to the people she loved most. She had to tell them she was safe, that she was staying with a friend, and that she didn't want to come home yet. For her parents, that call was confusing and devastating. It didn't sound like their daughter. The tone was wrong. The words were forced. But the police, hearing that she had made contact, initially treated the case as a runaway situation rather than an abduction. This classification would prove fatal. Investigators and journalists who later examined the case described those 44 days of captivity as beyond comprehension. But in this documentary, we keep that description respectful without glorifying the details of the cruelty. What matters is the truth of her suffering and the failure of society to save her. Junko was not just a passive victim. She pleaded for her life. She tried to escape. She begged the boys to let her go home. During those weeks, the house was not a fortress of solitude. It was a hub of activity. Other students came and went. Friends of the gang members stopped by to play video games or hang out. Some of them saw Junko. Some of them realized something was wrong. And yet, a suffocating code of silence prevailed. Fear of the gang leader, Miyano, was so intense that witnesses chose to say nothing rather than risk becoming targets themselves. Neighbors heard screaming in the night. They heard loud thuds. They heard a girl crying. But in the urban anonymity of Tokyo, they turned up their televisions. They closed their curtains. No one reported anything. Perhaps the most tragic moment came when police officers briefly visited the house for an unrelated matter, a parking violation or a noise complaint. The boys, terrified of discovery, forced Junko to hide. They threatened her, telling her that if she made a sound, they would kill her family. Terrified, injured, and traumatized, she stayed silent, praying for a miracle that never came. The officers stood just feet away from her, wrote their ticket, and left. The door closed, and with it her last real hope of rescue. As days turned into weeks, November bled into December. The holidays approached. While the rest of Japan prepared for the new year, the Furuta family suffered in silence. Her mother stopped eating, her health deteriorating rapidly from grief. Her father kept calling police stations, demanding they do more, insisting that the phone call had been coerced. Her brother walked past bulletin boards with her photo every day, the paper yellowing in the winter sun, hoping someone, anyone, had seen her. The disappearance of a young girl in a safe Japanese suburb triggered a wave of fear among parents in Misato and Adachi. They began walking their children to school themselves. Doors that were once left unlocked were now bolted. Lights stayed on all night. Rumors spread through the schools. Was it an abduction? A stalker? A Yakuza trafficking ring? But nothing brought investigators closer to the truth. The boys had effectively created a black hole in the middle of the city, into which Junko had vanished. On January 4, 1989, the ordeal came to a tragic end. After 44 days of unimaginable suffering, Junko Furuta died. She succumbed to her injuries and the horrific conditions of her captivity. When the boys realized she was gone, panic set in. They were not hardened career criminals. They were cruel, violent teenagers who suddenly realized they had a body to dispose of. The reality of murder charges loomed over them. In a desperate, clumsy attempt to erase the evidence of their crimes, they stole a 55-gallon industrial oil drum. They placed Junko's body inside. They filled the drum with wet concrete, sealing her inside a tomb of stone. They didn't bury it. They didn't take it to the mountains. They drove to a desolate, reclaimed area of land in Koto, Tokyo, a place known for construction sites and emptiness. They rolled the heavy drum out of a truck and abandoned it in a grassy, muddy lot, assuming it would look like just another piece of construction debris. To the world, Junko Furuta had simply vanished without a trace. For months, that concrete drum sat untouched. Construction workers passed it. Rain fell on it. The seasons began to change. Investigators kept working on the disappearance, but the trail had grown ice cold. There were no new sightings. The phone calls had stopped. There were no reliable witnesses. The police were running out of leads to justify keeping the case active. It seemed destined to become a permanent cold case, a mystery that would haunt the Furuta family forever. But fate intervened in an unexpected way. In early 1989, investigators investigating a completely different crime arrested one of the boys involved in Junko's captivity. It was a minor arrest regarding an assault on another teenager. During the interrogation, the boy seemed unusually anxious. He was sweating, nervous, seemingly overwhelmed by a guilt that went far beyond a simple assault charge. A sharp detective noticed the behavior. He pressed harder. He noticed inconsistencies in the boy's timeline. He sensed a bigger secret. Under intense pressure, knowing that the gang's loyalty was fracturing, the boy finally broke. He didn't confess directly at first. He hinted. He mumbled strange comments about a girl and concrete. Finally, he looked at the detective and asked a chilling question. "Do you know about the girl in the drum?" That single sentence cracked the case open. Police rushed to the abandoned construction site in Koto Ward. It was a gray, overcast day. Construction workers, confused by the sudden swarm of police vehicles, led them to the heavy steel drum that had been sitting there for months. Officers approached it carefully. Even from the outside, before they even touched it, the smell was undeniable. It was the scent of concrete dust mixed with something their instincts recognized instantly, the unmistakable, heavy scent of decomposition. They called in heavy equipment to move it. They broke the concrete seal. And there, preserved in the darkness of the drum, they found what remained of Junko Furuta. Officers later described the scene at the construction site as quiet, solemn, and devastating. Hardened detectives who had worked homicides for years were visibly shaken. Some investigators cried. Others couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the sheer brutality of the disposal. Junko had been missing for over a month, and now she was back, but not the way anyone hoped. The discovery confirmed the worst fears of a waiting family and a watching nation. News of the discovery spread rapidly across Japan. The headlines were screaming, horrific, and relentless. High school girl found in concrete. 44 days of horror. The nation was horrified. The details that emerged, of the gang, the torture, the bystanders who did nothing, shook the Japanese public to its core. People demanded the harshest punishment possible. They wanted the death penalty. They wanted the boys' names and faces published. But the legal system had limits. The perpetrators were minors, aged 16 to 18. Under Japanese juvenile law, their identities were protected. They were referred to in the media only as Boy A, Boy B, Boy C, and Boy D. Despite the severity of the crime, the prosecution could not seek the death penalty. The sentences handed down were shockingly light in the eyes of the public, ranging from a few years in a juvenile detention center to a maximum of 20 years for the leader. The public was outraged. Protests were held. Journalists defied the law to publish the boys' names, arguing that the severity of the crime forfeited their right to privacy. How could a crime so cruel, so prolonged, and so devoid of humanity end with such lenient sentences? How could a young girl's life be taken, her future stolen, with so little consequence for those responsible? The aftermath rippled through society. Families across Japan questioned their own safety. The myth of Japan as a perfectly safe society was fractured. Parents gripped their children's hands tighter at crosswalks. Young girls avoided walking alone at night. Schools held emergency assemblies to discuss safety and the importance of looking out for one another. And Junko's family, broken by grief and the media storm, struggled to understand how the world could allow something like this to happen. They retreated from the public eye, left to mourn a daughter whose final days were defined by the worst of humanity. In the years that followed, the case of Junko Furuta became a dark symbol of systemic failure. It highlighted failures in community vigilance, the neighbors who heard but didn't act. It highlighted failures in policing, the dismissal of the case as a runaway. It highlighted failures in juvenile sentencing, laws designed to rehabilitate shoplifters were applied to torturers. And, perhaps most painfully, it highlighted a failure in compassion. But Junko's story is also a symbol of courage. Because throughout her ordeal, Junko never lost her humanity. According to the few details that emerged from the trial and confessions, she remained polite, soft-spoken, and hopeful until the very end. She tried to negotiate. She tried to appeal to the boys' better nature, even when they showed none. She believed someone would come. She believed, despite everything, that she would go home. Her story changed Japan. It sparked fierce legal debates on juvenile crime reform, eventually leading to stricter sentencing for violent youth offenders. It influenced school safety programs, parental awareness campaigns, and police protocols regarding missing teenagers. Her name became a reminder that behind every statistic, behind every sensational headline, is a real person. Someone loved, someone missed, someone with dreams of becoming a fashion designer, someone who deserved better than the silence of a concrete drum. Today, decades later, the area where the drum was found has changed, developed over time. But people still visit the site. They leave fresh flowers. They leave colorful paper cranes, a symbol of peace and healing. They leave small notes written by strangers, people who weren't even born when she died. Messages that say, "We didn't forget you. Rest in peace, Junko." The boys who committed the crime are now middle-aged adults. They have served their time. They walk freely in society, some having changed their names, others returning to lives of crime. Their identities were sealed by law, but for the public, justice was not done. The scales were never balanced. And although the facts of the case are known, the psychological scars remain. Many questions linger in the collective conscience of the nation. Why didn't anyone intervene? Why did so many stay silent? Could she have been saved if just one person had made a phone call? The case of Junko Furuta stands as a grim testament to the bystander effect and the darkness that can reside in the human heart. But it also stands as a call to action, a plea to never ignore the signs of distress, to never assume someone else will help. What do you think really happened in this case regarding the failures of the investigation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, but please keep them respectful to the victim and her family. If you'd like to see more cold case investigations like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it so more people can learn about these stories. Justice can be late. Justice can fail. But remembering victims, that part is up to us.